Hey everyone, welcome back to the Counselor's Chair podcast. I'm your host, Josh Zello, and I'm excited to be back with you for an episode with my friend Gabe Whitmer. Gabe is created and manages one of the top 20 performing mortgage lending teams in the nation, and his team also lands in the top 10 in customer service nationwide year over year. He's a local Chattanooga investor and co-owns Contract Coffee in the Upper Peninsula. On top of all this, Gabe is a dedicated husband, father, and friend, and a guy that I really respect for his ability to connect with folks and maintain relationships. And that's exactly what we talk about in this episode. So thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy. Also, for anyone interested, I'll be doing a free live stream on March 25th from 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern called 10 Ways to Manage Adult ADHD. I'll leave the link in the description below and feel free to pass it along or register yourself. Enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Sorry for the 4-year-long hiatus. We took a little break for the pandemic and then didn't have time to pick it back up, but excited to be back in the saddle and with Gabe today. So, Gabe, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. I feel honored to be the number one guest after the 4 years. This is great.
I mean, I think for me, as I was going through people that I would like to have on, I mean, your positive disposition, man, it's just like contagious. And I was like, you know what? To be back in this for the first time, have Gabe in front of me and get this back underway sounded like a great plan. So thanks again, dude.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question for you out of the gate. And I've actually been wanting to ask you this for years. I have this memory of you, and it was at my kid's birthday party. We were actually standing on the back deck, and you had been killing it at AT&T with management in a management position, if I understood that correctly. And you were looking to make a bit of a change. And I think you were debating back and forth between what you're doing now and maybe financial advisor. Were you going back and forth between the two?
There's a couple out there. Yeah, there's a couple. We were like playing and navigating and trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah. So you were, but they were all self starts, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were all, how can I get the ball rolling on my own thing? You know, which made a lot, I mean, to me, it made a lot of sense at the time. You got all the characteristics to kick something off and get people on board. But what's wild is obviously you chose the lending route and have built an amazing thing in the last, that had to have been 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago.
It was.
And it's been kind of wild to watch from a distance. You built this behemoth of an organization and an incredible life, man. It's really been cool to see. And I've been curious. It's like something switched in you. Like something happened right around that time, or maybe in the years subsequent, because I think you were with maybe 2 different banks before you wound up with First Bank, if I remember right. So your life just exponentially grew. It's like you put the pedal down to the metal and just floored it. Describe that time in life a little bit and kind of what switched over for you.
Yeah. So coming out of AT&T was fascinating. I was managing an area. I had 2 guys. One had been there 10 years. One had been there 8 years. Got themselves into some code of business conduct issue. Never had an employment issue prior. What they did was wrong. And HR came and said, Gabe, you make a decision whether we want to put them on a notice or whether we want to terminate them, right? And I thought about it for a long time, and I looked at histories, and I looked at what they've done for the company, and I was like, these guys have been really loyal. They've had chances to leave. I'm going to put them on a final notice that gives them a year to kind of work off of it, stay employed, and prove themselves. And the next morning I walked in, and my boss had termination paperwork on the table. And it was this flip for me, I can be a company guy to they're not going to make the decisions I expect them to make, right? And AT&T is a great company, right? Huge company. They did a lot of things for me well. They taught me a lot of amazing stuff. But it was that moment, and it was probably like 6 months after that we were on your deck. Yeah. And I was like, this isn't going to last. Like, I can't work for a company that this is how they treat people in the end. And again, great memories, great friends still at AT&T. But then it was, do I want to start something from the ground up? Do I want to jump into financial planning? And I got recruited by, at the time, FSG Bank. A good friend of mine, Jill Green, she now runs a hedge fund. And she said, hey, let me bring you into mortgage. Let me train you. And they did something unprecedented. They put me into a 6-month sales. I processed, I underwrote, I learned the business, and they just taught me. And so many people had said, "Oh, it's an old man's game. You can't learn it. It is what it is. You'll never get into it." And I don't golf, right? So like, like it was interesting. And so FSGB Bank merged with Atlanta Capital Bank, and then Atlanta Capital Bank got bought by First Bank. And, it was interesting when First Bank bought Atlanta Capital, First Bank came and said, "What do you want?" And I said, I want to grow. And they said, "How do you want to grow?" And I said, "I don't know." And they said, "Well, when you answer that question, come back. Like, we're merging in. You're here." Yeah. And so it allowed me to hire guys like Tyner, and Zach, who, a lot of guys we kind of grew up with the last 10, 15 years. And I got to build something organically. And, none of the guys had experience in mortgage. They had experience in life. They had experience in people. They had experience in how to navigate tough situations with people. And so I think that's probably that timing of, I really loved mortgage, but First Bank open-ended it and just said, "Hey, what do you want? You go grow your own brand." And I was like, "Okay." And so it was probably some freedom to do that. It was probably the right time, the right place. So it's, and then when you're doing that, you're asking yourself constantly, am I doing the right thing? Am I treating my people right? Are we taking care of clients the right way? Why is it done like this when we could do it like this? And so we constantly come back and go, "Hey, what do we need to shift and change here?" But I think that timing is really kind of the boom.
Huh. So all of that came from a bit of an ethical dilemma for you. I'm sure that felt like a crunch too, a bit of suffering in there for you.
You kind of feel like you're on the wrong side of Star Wars, right? Like you're like, I'm not on the Jedi side like I want, And so I can pinpoint that because I was gonna go the career route and see how long that took me, and then it was like, nope, not gonna do it.
Yeah, you took a hard right, man. You took a hard right and built a culture. And you kind of wove this in there, built a culture with your friends. I mean, when First Bank opened it up for you, you brought in people, like you said, that I've heard of or known in the circles of all the overlapping circles that we have in life. You started bringing them in. And what was it like bringing your friends into business, And I think that's I know you wanted to focus on friendship sort of thematically, but I think you had this opportunity to really bring people with you as you built this wonderful life that you have in front of you, right? So what's it been like bringing friends in, and the positives, and then also maybe some of the difficulties of navigating that in business, if you've had any of those pop up?
So on the mortgage side, it's been a lot of fun. So I had a couple people on my team already from like an assistant standpoint or a support standpoint. We were up in Nashville seeing some friends who'd moved back from Buffalo, and Tiffany and Tyner. And we were sitting having a drink, and Caitlin, my wife, was like, "Tyner, why don't you come work for Gabe?" And I kind of looked at her because she knew, like, I'd actually hired a guy. He came on, he was there 2 days, went back to his last place because they called him and offered him more money. And so at that point, I was kind of like, no, I'm done with this team thing. I'll do it myself. And the reality is, it takes teams to excel and do well, and we need support. And so Caitlin looked at Tyner and was like, "Why don't you come work for him or with him more than anything?" Yeah. And he kind of looked back and was like, "Okay." And I went back to the bank and we wrote him an offer, and he was the first one. And, now we have a team of 14. I kind of like to lead and not manage. Mm-hmm. So I tell people, I'm like, look, I'm going to hop in with you when there's a problem. We're going to be there. I don't want to tell you how to do your job. Right. Like I'm going to help you grow. We're going to grow together. And so I tell people all the time, I'm a great leader. I know I'm a great leader. But I am not a good manager, right? And I have a life coach who gives me some management tidbits, and he's great and helps me. And, because I always look at it of how do we lead people? How do we help people? I don't want to come back and be like, did you do X, Y, Z? And so I think it's a fit because we don't micromanage, but it's as close as a family, a work family as I've seen. And it's really cool because of that. But
yeah, I hear that. I mean, in that I'm guessing you're giving your people a fair bit of autonomy, right? Not necessarily coming down on their heads, but also the gentle breeze behind the ship, like trying to move everybody along in a good direction and letting them steer at the same time.
And, it's funny because it's mortgage banking. So it has some service, has some sales, has some education, has a little bit of everything. At the end of the day, if you step back and just realize how much impact it has on people's lives, from a security standpoint, from a wealth standpoint, from your kids have their own bedroom standpoint, it's really freaking cool, right? Mm-hmm. And so that part of it's great, but then to share that with a group of people and go, hey, when your kid's out of school at 3, go pick them up, right? Work when you need to. Yeah. And we work a lot, but we have the ability to step in and go, hey, I'm going to go to a volleyball game from 4 to 6 and I'm going to hop back on. Mm-hmm. Or I worked my schedule this way today. And it's, it's work hard, play hard, but let's just take care of people and love on them, and it makes it fun.
You built a system that your values can operate in.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that you can stay attentive to those values and pursue them at the same time.
That's right.
Yeah, including friendships in the office, friendships outside of family too, right? So that's something I appreciate about being in business myself too. I worked for Lee for years, and before I kind of jumped ship to my own practice, which the autonomy for me was unreal, and it turned into a mission, honestly, to try and provide that for my employees. Counselors, we're helping people through some of the most difficult times in life, right. And oftentimes the companies that employ counselors don't treat them well. And I think from some of my own experiences and my own ideology and my own values was just like, man, I'm not just creating this for myself at this point. Like, I'm creating this for the counselors that eventually are going to be underneath me. At one point, that was a much larger number than it is now. I'm kind of comfortable with where it is now, shrunk it down a bit. But yeah, that being able to pursue your values and creating an environment where you can comfortably pursue them, both at work, but then when you're off of work, right, at home with the kids. And I'm curious for you, man, because again, like I said at the beginning, just sort of pulled to your personality. And I think a ton of people are pulled to your personality. I mean, our circles overlap all over the place, right? So if I happen to bring your name up or somebody's like, hey, do you know this person? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And their faces light up. Can you share a little bit about your values as a person? Like, if you were to think, what are the things in life that I value? Maybe if you want to break them into categories of family and business and friendships, what lights you up, man? Like, what are those values behind your sort of more positive approach to life, I think, and to relationships?
Well, hey, I appreciate everyone thinking that and seeing that. Yeah. The reality is there's highs and lows, right? And
of course.
I work really hard to be a great husband, a great dad, a great friend, and a great mortgage guy. I learned a while back I can't be good at everything else. I have interests, right? Like, you're going to take me fly fishing sometime, and it's going to be great.
We'll get the boys together on the pond soon, too. It's warming up.
Yeah. I'll never be the best fisherman, and I'm okay with that, right? I'm okay being good at what I'm good at. I mean, if you take those 4 things and you kind of go, how can we impact people's lives and treat people? It comes back to that. A little bit of kindness can change people's lives, right? And like, I may not be having the best day, but I realize how I impact someone buying a coffee at the coffee shop or sitting down with someone. Like, they could have had a much worse day than me. And so if I can bring a little bit of light and smile, like that's what I want to do. you'll appreciate this. My nickname in high school was Smiles because I
Really?
just like
Yeah.
I could be being beat up on the football field and I was just walking off with a big smile. And like I don't know how many muscles it takes to smile, but I just try to smile constantly. But people need that, right? And they need people that show up and engage and care. And look, Robin Williams was one of my favorite people, and we all know he ended his life tragically, but he brought so much joy to people, and it was free. It was he was himself. Now, there's mental health stuff there, and there's stuff that happened, but I think that's it for me. Is I just come back to can I make somebody happy? So I appreciate that you say that people are drawn to me. Like that's great, right? I want to be engaging.
Yeah, and you need to hear it too.
Oh, thank you. But I don't know. Like, I really don't know the core of it. You've met my dad, and my mom. Like,
absolutely.
I have two great parents,
dynamic people.
They did what you did, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like they're therapists, and like they like maybe there's a huge piece of that. But it's, I don't know. We get the ability to be alive, and I don't really care if you're working at McDonald's as behind the register, or you're running, Vocker, right? And you're doing cars or Volkswagen, I guess would be Volkswagen, not Vocker. You have the ability to make change in people and improve. And so if you wake up and go, who am I going to impact today? It can be pretty cool.
Well, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful value. Kindness, care. I hear compassion in that too, but also you kind of have to have eyes to see that, right? You have to have eyes to see people that might need that kind of impact, or just notice folks. It might be folks you know, might be folks you don't know, but if kindness is a high value, you tend to see people more. You tend to look up. You tend to think about giving more than you think about getting or receiving. That's really kind of what I heard in what you were saying too. I can't remember if it was St. Francis. He said one of the only ways you can know yourself is by giving yourself away. And it's a powerful thing, man. When you're able to give to the people around you, even if it's just kindness, there's an element of yourself that you discover, right? Like there's like self-discovery in giving. Yeah. And in our culture, that's not necessarily that's not a message that's front and center,
Well, we're guarded, right? We don't, as a culture, we don't want to give a trade secret away, or we don't want to open up the door where someone judges us too much. Or what you just said is funny, because I say this constantly: is give time freely. And then there's the flip side is there's a boundary to that, which is until somebody takes advantage of it, right? But like, give time freely. It, like, if somebody calls and says, hey, I want to learn how to fix credit, or I want to learn how to drive a car, and they don't know, like, it's not hard to say, yeah, I can help you with that. And you fit it into the schedule, right? It doesn't have to be you leave your family and you take time away, like, fit it into the schedule. But giving freely, I think, is a really cool aspect.
Yeah. Well, especially where there's this sort of subconscious return, you're not doing it necessarily for anything, but you wind up receiving inwardly this revelation of self, like, oh, who am I, and what am I made of? And I mean, when you give, it puts constraints on things. Like it puts some time constraint. You coming here, you're giving your time to this right now. That means that you're missing potential opportunity elsewhere. It puts constraints on things. And I think that pressure actually squeezes some good things out of us. Like kind of like the ethical dilemma that you faced at AT&T that sort of squeezed you into something better for yourself.
Yeah, I know when you had coffee a while back and you were like, man, my caseload's huge and I'm running and you loved it. But the other thing, I remember you saying something like, it's made me more efficient. right? So like
Yeah.
the flip side of all that is you give time freely and you care and you're kind to people and you talk to them in the hallway and you give them some smiles. But it makes like when you give time away, it makes you more efficient at the things you need to do.
Yeah, that's a good thread in together, because it definitely has. It takes things out of the peripheral.
Yeah.
You wind up focusing on what actually matters, because your time is full and full of good things. I had this realization when I was like 35, which I won't give away my age right now. But I was like 35. I wish it had come to me sooner. And it was like the day after my 35th birthday. And somebody asked me how I was doing. And I was like, I can't remember who it was that asked me. I wish I could place it. But they asked me how I was doing. I was like, man, I'm kind of stressed. I'm tired. I feel overworked. Not necessarily undervalued, maybe undervaluing myself, Yeah. And I feel like I have all this stuff that I'm running to, and I don't have like a lot of my own vital energy to bring into places. I'm just kind of searching for something in me to meet needs, just patching holes in walls. And after I said it, something hit. You can call it a divine moment. You can call it an existential moment of realization. Something smacked me like really hard, and I was like, "Did I just complained about the things that the 25-year-old me would have died for?" So I just spent the last 10 years building all of this because it's exactly what I wanted and it's good. And I haven't realized it yet. I'm actually complaining about it. And I get, like, I'm not trying to say like everything is sunshine and rainbows and we should just never complain. Complaining is a part of life. But in that moment, something got squeezed out of me, a very significant reframe of like, my life is full of good things. My time is full of good things. And rather than perceiving them as needs that are pulling out of me, it's like, no, these are things that I actually get to pour into.
Well, and it's really hard to live in the day. It's really hard because every couple of days I feel like I'm setting new goals, but that means the goalposts keep changing. You have to sometimes go, man, I've made it this far and I've gotten to help this many people and I get to have my family, right? And yeah, you said it, 25-year-old me would be really, really proud of 35-year-old me. And you just got to sit back sometimes or acknowledge it daily. Here's where I am.
Yeah, given that those younger parts of ourselves room to actually enjoy what they labored for. And I guess that gets to some of the friendship stuff, because I'm really curious. We're talking about time. We're talking about this value of kindness and connection with other people. And I know you were telling me that you have been thinking about this idea of adult friendships, and having adult friendships requires kindness, connection, consideration, looking up, seeing people, valuing your time enough to also bring people into it. I mean, all this stuff just kind of dances right around the adult friendship stuff. So yeah, like what brought that up for you, man? I think I'm curious to hear more about kind of what sparked that.
It's fascinating. Caitlin, my wife, right? And I say, Caitlin well, but I say that for everyone listening, has the last 4 or 5 years, I'll say something. And she was like, remember, people are inherently lonely and they just need a friend.
Man, we have some wise wives.
We married. I'm glad we're doing this, but like they could be here schooling us.
100%.
Right? And so it's fascinating because, especially when you have a family, inviting another family into your home, your kids have to engage, your spouse has to engage. It's not just if you're merging families for an evening of dinner or drinks or whatever that looks like. That's hard because you're not just trying to go, 2 dudes hanging out. So but that phrase of people are inherently lonely, it is in my soul because they are they are. And so when you offer them a hand and people are very quick to grab on, And so it's funny. Someone recently, we were at the baseball field and Silas was playing and I was like, hey, I was talking to him. I was like, we'd love to have you over one night. And they were like, to your house? Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, like where else would that be? Right. And they're like, you want to hang out with us? Yeah. And what you find out is that most people don't really know how to do adult friendships. If they have a neighbor that's maybe a friendship, close or not, they have some work friendships, but it's really hard to be intentional. And so it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun getting to do that and just realizing that we have an opportunity to be friends with people. Yeah. It's been fun watching our kids have to engage differently. We were on the way to someone's house like 6-8 months ago, and the kids were kind of complaining, like, we don't know them. Who are they? And Caitlin turned around and she was like, this is part of you being a Whitmer. Like, you're going to show up and you're going to ask questions and you're going to engage. And it doesn't mean you're going to be best friends, but you can smile and you can have fun. And they ended up sitting on the couch playing, Mario Kart and chasing each other around the backyard. But it takes time, right? It takes energy, but it's what we're here for.
That quote from Kat too. I mean, from my work throughout the years, I can verify that. Like, I hear that so frequently, but also I'm human. And so I'm also lonely, inherently lonely. Thankfully, I have good friends in my life and good people to connect with. And I am super grateful for that. I could always do a bit of a better job reaching out and connecting more often. Can. Yeah, it gets spun up and 2 weeks goes by and I'm like, oh, haven't responded to that text. Need to respond to that text. I'm like notoriously bad at that. And that loneliness is, if we recognize it in ourselves, I think it does poise us to realize that other people are feeling similarly. Because I think the thing that holds me back and probably holds most people back is assuming that the other person actually isn't interested.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, they probably have their own friend groups, or it would be awkward if I engaged this, or like, I haven't talked to this person in 2 years. They probably have their own lives, probably aren't interested in hanging out. But if you assume the baseline is that they want to, right? That there's something innate in them that is calling out for that, it makes the ask a lot easier. Yeah. I would imagine. Yeah. Like I've never really thought about it that way, that the baseline is, hey, this person is probably dealing with loneliness just as much as anybody else, and throw the lifeline, like throw that out there. It makes me think too, I don't know if it was Viktor Frankl, maybe it was somebody else. I'm having trouble remembering who I'm getting quotes from. I get all jumbled up. That's because I'm getting older. But man, it was man's greatest desire is to be known, and man's greatest fear is to be known.
Yeah.
It's like our greatest desire and our greatest fear are the same thing. Yeah. And I think that does create the loneliness, especially internal loneliness. Like if you don't have the most kind dialogue internally, that loneliness turns to something quite dark.
Spot on. I love that quote, by the way. And think about this too. The last 10 years of social media has really taught us that if you don't have the same opinions, you shouldn't be friends, which is crazy, right? Because people like marriages are built on differences, like friendships are built on differences. And so we've kind of allowed pieces to change and go, oh, if you're not this person or this sect of people, maybe you shouldn't hang out with this sect of people. And it's so wrong. Like it's, people want to engage, and they want to be liked, they want to be seen, and they want to be able to have that connection. And I think you confirmed it, right? People are lonely in getting to help people and treat people. I get to see it as people move, and as they move to an area and they don't know people. And so like I'm in the small men's group, and it's called People Over Profit, right? It's called POP, and it's great. And there's a guy in the group who showed up, and we were just chatting after, and he's like, my wife's made a ton of friends. He was like, I just don't really, he was like, I haven't gotten to do a lot. And I was like, well, when are we getting a beer? And so like we set a beer for 2 weeks from then, and it's coming up. Yeah. But like, it's not, it's that's fun, right? Like it's, now, and this is your world. Like if you're introverted, then you have to decide how do you charge up for that? Like, cause you can, like I can, as an extrovert, I just fuel on that. Yeah. So like I can like recharge sitting down and but but again, it doesn't have to mean you're having people over to your house till midnight. It doesn't mean you don't set a time and you say, hey, I have an hour. Can we do this? And you don't set a deadline for it. There can be really good boundaries on creating friendship, giving time freely, engaging people. But yes, if the baseline is everybody's lonely, then it's not a big ask.
No, it's an easy ask.
Yeah. Now people are busy. Sure. So that's the other thing. You might get someone that's like, I'd love to, but I'm really busy. That's probably truthful.
Well, and that speaks to our culture, right? We value productivity over connection, right? And that's okay. I mean, I'm not even shaming that, but I think that accentuates it. Is like, here is my innate desire, like what my greatest innate desire, and here's an opportunity to meet it. But I have stuff to do.
That's right.
And I totally understand. I mean, got 3 kids and they're all in sports and running around all
at a ball field every night. Oh my gosh. Doing laundry.
Absolutely. Yeah, laundry. Gosh. Or not doing laundry and then panicking when you go to find it. Like finding jerseys. Where are the jerseys? Thank goodness we have multiples. But yeah, I think our culture, and maybe even in a more capitalist society, I guess that's normal, is to value productivity over everything, because I think we're taught to some degree in that environment that our value is based on our productivity, which is kind of scary. It's motivating in some sense, but when you talk about connection with people, sitting down, making friends, having a conversation, that's not the typical productivity that we've been taught to pursue, which is, I think, another reason I appreciate you and why I'm excited that we're talking about friendships here, because I think you do this. Well, I know you have a ton on your plate, but you're carving out time for this stuff. And there's a specific question in here, like, what happens if you don't? Like, I'm sure there's been times in life where your head's down and then you look up a month later and you're like, I've had little one-off conversations with people at various places, or I have my family at the office, I have my family at home. And especially as a man, what happens to you when you don't engage with friends? Like,
it's a really, really good question. Because what happens is my line of work gets really busy about February and runs through December, right? And so normally what happens is when I step back, I realize I'm just a little bit sad. I feel like I've missed something. And I think the flip side of that is you can overextend yourself and say, oh, I'm going to give time freely and let's just schedule all the stuff. And then you're gassed. And so there has to be this balance between, what your family needs, what you need. Right. And so, but there's a lot of, I don't know, like it fuels me to have people engaged in my life and being able to engage in people's lives. And so when I don't have that, I miss it.
Yeah, well, it's like you run out of fuel.
Yeah,
it's like running on fumes. And for me, what I notice is I dialogue with myself a lot. Okay. Like my internal dialogue of self just goes up because I'm not talking to anybody other than my clients and my family.
Yeah,
I create a friend in there that I'm bouncing stuff off of that's not typically there. Now, what's tough about that is our internal world is full of critics too, and so. Right. If you slip into a bit of a lull, a little bit of a depression, feeling that isolation, maybe you've been making some unhealthy decisions with the body at the same time, because that usually coincides. that inner critic can turn up and maybe even convince you that it would be a burden to reach out to someone, right? Yeah. So I hear things like that a lot, but I appreciate you answering the question, honestly. I know it's a tough one.
No, yeah. Here's a question for you, okay? So you have what I would consider one of the most stressful jobs because you are people's airbag. That's how I'm going to call it, right? People slam in and you come out and make sure they're okay, right? And I watched my dad his whole career and he handled it really well. But you handle it really well. Like when I get stressed, I at least have my other guys I can talk to, and I have all these people to bounce ideas off of. But like, how do therapists handle? Because you're the support for so many people, right?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. It's a great question. And it speaks to something that I really I don't know, I was confronted with. I talked with Julia about it. I actually talked with my therapist about it too. In some of the ways that I feel like being a therapist fundamentally changes you as a person. Yeah. And it's not necessarily what I think is helpful to make clear both to anybody listening and for our conversation is it doesn't necessarily feel like the things that I'm hearing change me. I tend to do between 5 and 8 sessions in a day. I just really prefer to stay in the zone, to move through, to be with people. And what that kind of intentionality does to me, does to my wiring, like 5 to 8 hours of very intentional focus, showing up with as much presence as I possibly can, dealing with my own stuff in real time and like compartmentalizing as we move along so I can stay present, and share relevant feedback and pull ideas when ideas come, and pull quotes and pull names, and also foster a sense of a relationship with someone. Because for me as a therapist, the relationship is what is most fundamentally important. The rapport that's being built, the fit that's growing between us. How does all of that shape me and play out when I meet someone for the first time on a soccer field, right? And my whole day is what I just described, and someone's asking me about the weather, right? Yeah. I'm so used to kind of being down in my body, down in my mind, and present with folks that sometimes it's where I see it. We don't have to go down there all the time, but it's like it feels sometimes like I've like biologically rewired myself to do that. And so that's a really funny little quip, but on Emma's soccer team, there's she's got a player named Nova. She came over from CFC. Yeah. I think you probably know. Yeah. I was meeting her dad, and it was like our first conversation ever. It was at a practice, and I chuckled at this, and he probably thought it was the most random thing. But we wound up in an hour like going down this existential landslide of an idea about stoicism, right? And I could tell every once in a while he'd kind of look at me, and I'd look back and like, yep, I know. I know, man, it happens. But I think that in regards to friendships, in regards to relationships, I think that's the sort of I don't want to call it difficulty. It's not necessarily difficulty. It's just something else I have to be mindful of. Being able to shift gears and meet people where they're at outside of my office. There's definitely ways in which I'm affected by that aspect of my work. And then also being present with what people are bringing in to the work, because there is a heaviness to it. I don't want to say I'm unaffected by it. That is something I learned earlier in my career. It was actually around an election. I got into the field right around an election time, like people bringing in a lot of feelings around that. And there's something about that period of time where I realized I'm not going to make it as a therapist if I can't trust people. And so a big part of things, maybe this is something even your dad, I'm assuming, is recognized, because he seems like a pretty chill guy for having done this for so long. If I don't trust my clients to do the work on their own, if I don't trust them with their lives, if I don't trust them to be honest with me, I will carry everything around with me all at once. I have to be able to hand it back to you after, while you're leaving the session. I have to trust that you walked in here with this and you could hold it. Hopefully it's a little bit lighter leaving, but you're going to have to hold that too, and I hold space for it to return. That's kind of how I view it.
I like that. It's just triggered a thought, and I wish my dad could be here to share this real quick. Quick story. He was working in a child psych ward, and they were short staffed. Chaos broke out, and like one kid got out and ran away. This was like 48 years ago, right? 45 years ago. Mm-hmm. He's freaked out, and he finally gets everything settled down hours later, and he calls his boss, and he's like, I just don't know what to do. And his boss was like, listen, Milt, next time everything seems like it's going wrong, I just want you to go lock yourself in a closet for 10 minutes and don't come out. And my dad was like, what? He was like, it's gonna catch on fire. The kids are gonna explode. And he was like, well, if you don't do it, I'm gonna fire you. And my dad's like 22 at that point, right? He's like degree, like finishing a master's degree. And so like the very next night, short staffed, something happens, and the other thing his boss said is you have to announce it. And so he walks out and he goes, I'm going in the closet for 10 minutes, and like walks in, and he's like literally like shaking. He's watching his watch, and it hits 10 minutes, and he walks out ready to put fires out, and the kids are sitting there and they're playing and everything's calmed down. And so like, I think, I say this as a parent sometimes, but like sometimes it's, you just like, I have to remember like it's going to play out okay. And we can't control our clients. We can't control people. We can give them the tools. We can care about them, but we can't own their stuff. And that's kind of, that story sticks in me daily, where it's like, I can only help guide people. I can't make them.
It's influence, right?
Yeah.
And you can influence a situation, but you certainly don't control it.
Right.
And I think, man, okay, this ties into friendships really well, because I've had really long-term friends, and I think one of the reasons that's worked is because there's an acceptance on my part and on their part that like friendships wax and wane.
Yeah.
There are seasons of life where you can be really close to one another, and then there are seasons of life where you're spending less time. Maybe there's more literal distance. I can't control how available someone else is for me or not. And if they are or not available for me, and I am available for them or not, that actually doesn't have to mean anything. That doesn't have to mean that they don't like me, or that I don't like them, or that our friendship is over. It just means that it's waned a bit.
Yeah. So my best friend since second grade is Chris Cheney. We own a series of coffee shops in the Upper Peninsula together, right? So like, but I remember I was a freshman in high school. We were inseparable. And I called him and I was like, hey, I'm not going back out for football. And he was like, okay. And so I flipped to basketball full time. He ran football. And he got super involved in his youth group. I got super involved in my youth group. And like a couple of years went by where, we sit together at lunch, but like we weren't hanging out outside. We were, right. It was casual. And senior year kind of came back, and then a couple of years into college kind of came back. And like, it was a intentionality to check on each other. And then, he got married. I was his best man. I got married. He was my best man. Some years I see him a lot, and some years I don't. And we run a business together, but we talk business when we talk typically. But it was super cool. We were in Detroit. We went to a Lions and a Red Wings game, and I knew he was in Cleveland for a Browns Chiefs game. And I had messaged him, and anyway, long story short, he was like, "Hey, I'm walking through security now. Let me call you later." I was like, "What security?" And he was like, "Detroit." And I was like, "Look up." And he walked through and looked up, and his son and him were there, and Caitlin and I were there. We were like, "What?"
That's
right?
amazing.
But yeah, friendships, to kind of come full circle. I think that's, it's funny to me if somebody says a friendship stopped, because I don't know what would stop a friendship. If I have a need, I try to reach out and say, "Hey, would you help me with this?" Like, and that takes some communication, and it takes some willingness, or "Hey, I miss you. Can we set a call? It can be a couple weeks from now." But I think friendship doesn't mean you're together, right? Like the show Friends, like we don't live in that world. Should you be able to pick up and just enjoy the friend you have? Absolutely. And so it's gonna come and go a little bit.
Yeah, and I think we have to have an acceptance of that in order to have long-term.
Yeah.
To have those long-term friendships. I'm curious too, man. What is, I think, especially with adult friendships, like let's say someone's in their mid-30s, late 30s, early 40s, trying to amass a few more friends, which is actually something that I hear about really regularly.
Yeah.
I think there's some confusion for people on when someone moves from like acquaintance category into friend category.
Okay.
Like what, from your perspective, if you need to take a little time to think about it too, what tips the scales for you from someone being an acquaintance and someone that you're friendly with, kind with, to like moving into the friend category, maybe a little more trustworthy, maybe a little more desire in you to spend time with them. But what are some of the things that you think, this is usually what tips it over into friendship for me?
That's a great question. It's interesting as you're kind of asking the question. I think there's a couple things. One, I think I automatically assume everybody's my friend, and maybe that served me well, maybe it hasn't. And if I end up sharing something that's personal and it goes the wrong way, I just accept that the friendship's not quite what I thought, right? Like I've just learned I'm not going to take it personal. It's just not what I thought, or right. And that doesn't mean I don't like the person. It doesn't mean we don't hang out, but like, I think I just automatically kind of dive in. Some neighbors moved from Chicago into the neighborhood, and we'd hung out with them like once, walk in the neighborhood. Our kids are the same age, and they're like, "You want to come over?" And so we went over and had a glass of wine. They're showing us the house, and we're like 30 minutes in, and I just blurted out something funny and inappropriate at the same time. And they burst out laughing. And I said, "Look, there's this test. And if I don't know where we're like going, I'd rather learn early if I need to be super sensitive to something or not." Right. And he brings this up every 2 or 3 times we hang out, because he'll be telling someone and he's like, Gabe told this joke, and he uses as a barometer, and obviously we passed the test, but it is kind of true. Like, I'm going to assume everyone's my friend. I like that. And if it sometimes it doesn't work out how I plan, but I'd rather set the bar where I think, and maybe that's like that wholehearted jump in. Mm-hmm. It served me fairly well. Yeah.
Well, to be truthful, I like that. And I think that there's potential pain that can come from that, right? You're making yourself pretty vulnerable out of the gate in that assumption. However, I think the pain of wondering about the status of a friendship across all platforms is much worse than the potential of occasionally getting hurt by someone. The mental torture of wondering, are we friends? Are we not friends? Does this person appreciate me? Does this person value me or not? It's just like, I'm going to blanket assume that until I'm shown otherwise, and then I can reshuffle where this person belongs in my life. I think that I can see where in certain circumstances it makes you vulnerable, but on the other hand, I think it actually saves you from a significant amount of mental torture. And maybe that's why you're so approachable, man. It's just like that sort of baseline assumption, you know?
I will tell you what can get me in trouble is I'm a pretty well, one, we haven't talked about this and we can, but I'm very competitive. So there's this like I want to be humble, I want to be approachable, but I'm super competitive. But I'm also a huge prankster. I can get myself in a lot of trouble because I'll cross lines in the name of being funny. So I have a neighbor who I'm hoping doesn't listen to this, huge Clemson fan. I'm a huge Ohio State fan. When he goes on vacation, I am replacing his Clemson flags with Ohio State flags, right? Very minor. He will come home, he will laugh, he'll text me a ransom or he'll light it on fire. Like it'll be funny. And that's like the low level. But we've several times snuck into people's yards, put inappropriate inflatable blow-ups. And like for Halloween, there's these two skeletons that when the wind's not moving, they're just sitting. But when the wind's moving, they're inappropriate. Yeah. They're dancing. And the whole neighborhood knows about it. You have to gauge sometimes like how will these people feel about it. And so a lot of times, like that's one of my love languages. If I'm pranking you, you're up there, right, on my friend scale. Yeah. But I've got to also acknowledge there's a lot of people, especially as adults, that don't like that. I do play the internal game of, am I crossing a line because I don't know how they'll feel? And if I think in any way it's going to be bad, I don't do it. Yeah. And I don't know. So there's still the conversation of like, should I do this? But if I just assume everyone's going to be my friend and they want to be my friend, and
I think that's a safe baseline assumption, man, until proven otherwise. Yeah. And you're hitting on a really important point here too. I mean, friendship and relationships are a dance. We can think about your skeletons. We're kind of always litmus testing each other. I mean, it's been months since you and I sat down and had a serious conversation, right? There's a new you in front of me in some way, honestly. And I have to not just assume that you're the Gabe from 10 years ago. I have to get curious. I want to know you in this moment and what the last few months have looked like. And I can ask that directly, or like we've done, I can turn that into a conversation. You can turn that into a conversation with me that's just a little bit more organic than how's the last 10 years been, if I hadn't seen you in 10 years, but how's the last few months been? It's like, well, tell me about you, you know, like, and that's where that's my dance with people, is because because of what I do, I can kind of go straight into that territory a little too quick. There's a dance there. And I mean, like there is with anything in life. Same with marriages.
Well, and I'm glad you said marriages. So, you know, you aren't who you were when you married Julia. And we all, right? And it's so, one of my close friends' grandpas got up at his wedding and he was like, I've been married 52 years. I'm not who I was when I married your grandma, Dan, right? And he went on. He was like, 5 years in, I had enlisted, and and 10 years in, she got into quilting, and I didn't care about quilts. But he was like, I learned to enjoy what she learned to enjoy, and she learned to enjoy what I learned to enjoy. And every couple of years, we would look up and go, man, our interests have changed. And for like Caitlin and I, and for you and Julia, I don't know if you would have convinced me 10 years ago that being at the ball field every single night was enjoyable, and if that was seen as fun. But now I found a way to make it fun, and I love watching my kids play sports, but I don't necessarily love sitting there from a distance watching them at a practice that I can't see, but I've made it fun. And if I get to have Caitlin with me, we'll pour a glass of wine and sit in the truck bed, and we just find ways to do that. Friendship is like that, where like Silas's soccer coach is into Legos. Silas is into Legos. I'm not that big of a Lego guy, right, but I can talk it and I can enjoy it and I can look up cool videos, and it's okay to go down some like, hey, that may not be what I like, but I'm going to find a way to learn about it. Like I'm going to find a way to engage in it. And maybe that's just what makes some people a bad friend, is they don't engage in something they don't know about. I don't have tattoos. I love tattoos. I don't have tattoos. Some friends who have them want to talk about them. So I'll look up different types and, hey, I learned something. Am I going to get tattoos? Probably not. But I love that they have them. I think that's the dance of being willing to acknowledge that people change and you can grow together, you can grow apart. And I have some friends that probably have some problems in life, and it doesn't mean I'm not their friend. I still show up. I still engage. I love to be around them. You ride that wave with people.
And in that way, I think it's important to hit on to just in relationships, marriage, kids, friendships and work relationships. I think one of the things that tips someone into the inner circle, let's assume everyone's friends.
Yeah.
Right. I like that baseline. I want to start using that.
Yeah.
And there are people that tip into the inner circle, right? That they're close.
That's right.
They're like in your life.
They know where the bodies are buried.
Right. That's it. Yeah. I think what causes that tip, for me at least, is there are subtle, natural ways in which the relationship starts feeling reciprocal.
Yeah.
So we just start showing up for each other. It's almost, there is an ask, but at the same time, it's like someone kind of has a read and just knows when to show up.
Yeah.
Same, and then vice versa. There's this sort of reciprocation and maybe an interpersonal piggy bank. I had a supervisor that told me about this, and she said, Josh, there's an interpersonal piggy bank between all people.
Yeah.
And, you can make deposits in that, and you can make withdrawals. And an important part to know about friendships, about relationships with your clients, about relationships with anyone is if you ever plan on making a withdrawal, you should make sure that you make deposits. And a withdrawal could be a difficult conversation. It could be showing up, a big ask, like, can you guys show up for half a day and help us move all our stuff into a new house? That's a bit of a withdrawal, but I want to make sure we're putting things in it. And sometimes we can tell when someone needs to withdraw out of it, but they're not asking. And so we just give, right? I think that's the moment that people start tipping it. The bank starts building, like the account starts building,
So I think that's out of His Needs, Her Needs, the Love Bank.
Oh,
I think.
Yeah. Is it a book?
Yes, it is.
Okay, got you.
And it's a book on marriage. But again, if you view marriage as relational and friendship, right? But I love what you said. Like, it's true, right? And I don't know. Also, I don't know. I think this is PC. I think I can say this. Kind of grew up to where, like, if guys checked in on each other, they'd be like, "Oh, you're stupid," right?
Yeah.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy to me. Like, now I'm like, I don't care what someone thinks. I'm like, "Hey, you having a good day?" Like, and sometimes I was just like, "Yep, you good?" And some days they're like, "Hey, you have time to hop on a call?" But the check was really easy, and it's the reciprocation of, it doesn't have to be. You don't have to do that every day. You don't have to do that every week. Giving touch points is just an easy thing. We do it with our kids. We do it with our marriage. You don't have to do it on the same level, but if you're thinking of someone, shoot them a quick text.
Gosh, speaking of kids, I feel like having kids has actually made me a better friend in a lot of ways. You actually hit on this of almost requiring yourself to be interested in what your kids are interested in, and showing up to the baseball field, night after night after night after night. That's a gift to your kids. And it cycles back to what we said at the beginning of the podcast, is like, when you give, you actually realize who you are. And oh my goodness, have I realized who I am in becoming a father, man. Like, as I give to my kids, sometimes selflessly, sometimes begrudgingly, it's not always rainbows and sunshine. I think what that's allowed me to do is have a lot more patience with people in general, including with friends. It's like, well, you're interested in this thing, man. My son's really interested in Roman history. Ava my oldest, is just He could go for like an hour on the Romans, and I'm like, and I'm like interested. I'm like interested for like the first 12 minutes, and he knows it. Like I'm trying. We're here. I'll pull up Google and we'll Google. And he's like, Dad, what about this? I'm Googling. You know, we're with it, and that's not something I sat down and intended to do, right? But I'm developing a bit of a friendship with my kids at the same time. Like the principles still apply. And for me, I want my kids to feel that from me. It's teaching me. And then I think the same stuff gets overlaid in my friendships in some way. And then it's vice versa too. I think my friends also teach me how to be a good father.
Have you found that middle school also teaches you how to be a good friend? Like, it's like I'm watching my daughter. She's always had a consistent group. They're shifting, right? Friends are coming in and friends are kind of leaving. And I've had to say the same thing to her. Hey, just because so-and-so is not talking because you're not in a class right now, it doesn't mean they're not a friend. And, you know, and you also learn in watching 6th and 7th grade, right? Maybe we don't have to talk as much about people, right? Like I find that a lot is like, if a friend is trying to talk about another friend, I'm like, hey, you talk to them. Like, but I don't really want to engage in it. And if there's a problem, I'll referee a little bit and help. But that like 6th and 7th and freshman, like that kind of early where they want to talk about each other. What good is that? Right? What's it do?
It doesn't do
any
good.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. Going straight to a person, you know, teaching a kid that early, and yeah, absolutely. Like middle school is the Wild West socially, you know, and in our kids' school, I probably do this in yours too. Every quarter, they're like, you know, switching classes, switching schedules, and then every year they might get put in a different type pod, and then they don't see the same people. So there's this shuffling around for them. And yeah, they're also at the age where they're becoming just a little more self-aware of like how people are, and they're also developing personalities, and they can get annoyed.
Yeah.
Before it was kind of they just get angry, right? Kids 0 to 100 and just, you know, it was just anger, or it's just like high levels of frustration and crying and weeping and gnashing of teeth. Well, by the time they hit middle school, they have these sort of sub-level emotions before they hit like full-blown anger, right? It's like annoyance, irritated, upset, sad, hurt. The spectrum is growing, right? So to teach them, hey, you can communicate those emotions to another person, or you can just communicate to another person what's actually going on and get clarification and figure that out. You don't have to like talk to each other about another person that's getting under your skin. Yeah. And gosh, that's so important for friendships too, but especially at that age. And I think you're hitting on a point that's worth acknowledging too. I think the principles that we're talking about, the ideas we're talking about, they definitely apply broadly. But some of the limitations of our conversation is, I think sometimes female friendships are different, you know? And so, I don't know that I necessarily have a lot to contribute to that, but I think it's important for anybody listening just to acknowledge relationships in different groups also have nuances, right? And someone's experience of relationships could differ vastly from what we're talking about right now. And also the recognition that sometimes trauma and past hurt are tied up in attachment within friendships. But I do believe the things that we're talking about broadly are definitely helpful. I'm curious, man. I want to be respectful of your time too. I know we've been
are we at an hour?
Well, we've been plugging away here for an hour and 15 minutes.
Oh, I like it.
So I want to be respectful of your time, but I'm curious. I think this is a good question to start to move towards the end with. In what ways do you feel like your friends have shaped you to become who you are now? Maybe it's just a story. Maybe it's an idea. Maybe it's a feeling. But what comes up for that question?
So let me say this. I don't think friendship is defined by age. And so in the last couple years, there's two guys, one kind of high level, C-suite, oil exec, right? Retired. he's become a little bit of a mentor for me. And then I have a guy who's about to retire, and like I just enjoyed their friendship, and they're probably 30 to 45 years older than me. So that's been kind of a cool thing the last couple of years. My best friend, Chris Chaney, right? You heard about him earlier, coffee shops. I did a lot of traveling with him and his family on vacations. He was an only child, and his dad we'd get up and see if Chris would want to go grab breakfast. He'd still be asleep. And so we'd go and eat at the hotel breakfast. And he would just sit there and talk to me about business or life or the city we were in. And there's kind of that perspective. Friendships are broad, and they can carry, different, just different ages, different thoughts, different ideas. Yeah. You ever heard the song, I think Ben Rector sings it, but Old Friends. And it basically talks about how like you can't just make old friends. Like,
oh yeah. Yep.
And so like I have my group from high school, and they're great. We have the group from college. We have the group now, and just showing like all of that when I look at it, just showing up, right? I've had buddies' houses burned down. I've had people lose their wives. We've all seen divorces, and just being able to answer the phone, and kind of been a key theme.
I mean, what I hear in that is it may not necessarily be a singular thing that's changed you, but the way that people have shown up for you, taken time for you, mentored you, and been there for you in so many ways.
Shapes how you do life.
Yeah, shapes the perspective. It shapes how you, and that honestly might be why some of your perspective, which I really appreciated today, that the baseline is, everybody wants to be my friend, and I'm going to assume that that's the case. Maybe that perspective comes from all these friends that you've had throughout the years, and yeah, friends definitely shape perspective. Well, I know you shaped mine, and hopefully we're shaping each other's with the conversation, you know what I mean? And spreading a little love out to the universe at the same time. Cool. Well, man, any other thoughts or questions come up for you, or anything here at the end that you feel like you want to throw out there in regards to friendships?
No. So I do think this is a funny, because we started talking about being on your deck, right? Yeah. That's how we started. We've had a lot of our daughter soccer teams intermingle now, right? Players change, clubs, and so I'll leave everybody with this. Is I got a call from one of my friends that went from our club to your club, and he was like, "Man, you weren't joking. That Josh guy's just as chill as can be." And I was like, he can be. I was like, and they're like, "Man, he's like Zen." And I was like, and it's funny because it's somebody that's very loud and can be loud, and I can be loud, and I was laughing. I was like, you'll get him at one point. You'll get him at one point being loud, but
catch me on a rough,
But it was very. He was like, "Man, he's a great guy," and I don't know. You have such an ability to touch people's lives, and I appreciate that.
Oh man, thanks, Gabe.
Yeah,
thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that encouragement. Take it in. I've been working on that the last 10 years, trying to actually take in encouragement. So I appreciate that for sure, and the feelings super mutual. Thanks for the time, bud.
Yeah. Thanks
also,
for having me.
Is there anything as far as where people can find you? I'd like to say, take a second and plug yourself.
So yeah, listen, I will always hop on a call and talk to everybody about ideas or thoughts or business ideas. So my cell is easy. 423-584-5155. Right. So that's one. So you can also Whitmer, WHITMER team.com, Whitmer team. That's our mortgage landing page. Read reviews. We lend in 46 states. We love what we do, right? We have fun. Contrast Coffee, Upper Peninsula, Michigan. You can order online. You can, if you are in the Upper Peninsula, which is, if you've not been fly fishing up there, we gotta go. I was ice fishing.
Mm-hmm.
I was a wuss. I sat in the tent the whole time.
Heck yeah.
It was cold. But Contrast Coffee, there's 5 locations. They're fantastic. But ultimately, I want to try to be as accessible as I can for people and be a resource. And happy to be.
Awesome, man.
Happy to be.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Gabe.
Yeah, thanks for having me.